Welcome back to my YouTube channel. It is already another month, so you bet we're doing another reading wrap up. It was a really good reading month as well. So lots of books to share, lots of 4.5 stars and 5 stars, which make me super stoked that I'm having some really good reading months. So if you're new here, please click subscribe, like, all the YouTube things, and let's get into just reading and raving about books we love, or maybe some that we don't love. But let's kickstart off with July. In July, I read 8 books. We have 6 physical copies and 2 on Kindle, which I am so excited just to get into all of these. So starting off really, really strong. I think I mentioned in my previous mid-year freakout tag, a big anticipation, and I think everyone on BookTube's big anticipation was the next book in the, I actually don't know what she's calling the series, but Powerless into Reckless, and there was the novella. But I started off super strong, and we have Reckless here. I believe I'm gonna have to check Goodreads. I can never remember what I rate things. Okay, I'm a little bit shocked because on Goodreads it says I rated this a 5-star, but I'm pretty sure that means I rated it a 4.5. I'm gonna go with a 4.5 because it definitely hasn't stood out after the month. I read this at the very beginning, so it's been a whole month. I definitely don't say this is a 5-star for me, but a 4.5 nonetheless, because I did love it so much. And there is a lot of controversy right now on the internet with people saying it's like a bridging book, or even Lauren Roberts said it was a bridging book, and there's so much different opinions on why maybe people just thought this wasn't worth the wait, or whether it was, but I really did love it. I think I didn't have any high expectations for it. I was just excited to jump back into the world, and it lived up to kind of the minimal expectations I did have. I think reading the novella recently that she brought out in between really helped me love this book, maybe more so than other people. I definitely think if you're gonna jump into this series, read all 3 quite quickly together and you'll probably fall in love with the journey. I quite liked how this panned out, and the ending definitely had me, if you know what I'm talking about. A lot of people said they predicted it, and I'm just like, girl, we are not on the same path. I could not predict that, but I did love it. The next book I read was one I just needed to get off my shelves. I had started it so long ago. I feel like I was 40% through, and I just needed to finish it. It is Throne of the Fallen. Now this is I think a carry on from the Wicked Kingdom series, but you don't have to read it. But I honestly think maybe you should, because I didn't have a huge attachment to this book like a lot of people do. And maybe it's because I hadn't read the series that's kind of connected beforehand. So maybe that's my advice on this one. If you do want to jump into the hype around this book, read the series before. I have no idea if it'll add to your reading experience, but there definitely just wasn't a whole lot of like hype for me. I rated this a 3.5. I wanted to get through this. It's quite a chunky one as well. So I ended up grabbing Audible for the last little bit as well. But I don't know what it was. I loved the concept of this, and you know, the stolen art and how the artist gets involved. But it just kind of like lost me. I just wasn't super attached to either of the characters, but it was like a fun book to read nonetheless, but just not one that I was super like earning to finish. So I just wanted to get it over and done with. So it's a bit of a 3.5 read for me, because I can see why this would have got really, really good. It just wasn't the right mood or place for me to be reading it. So I just kind of got it done. The next book I read was a part of a book club pick, and it was The Song of Achilles, which is a way, way back like book talk read that I just never would have thought to pick up. I see the hype. I never was interested in it. It is a lot of Greek mythology that I thought that is just not for me. When I read, I don't want to think too deeply, but I was so incredibly wrong because this book turned out to be so good. It's actually a book I want to reread, because I think it's one of those books every time you pick up, you will probably learn something new. There is a lot of based kind of facts within this book on the real Greek mythology history. So I really, really loved this. I rated it a 4.5. It became super rushed at the end, which made me super emotional and attached. And I was having this discussion. It probably would be a 5-star if it wasn't so rushed. But then I also think if it didn't rush the ending and that was like a slow burn, maybe I wouldn't have been so emotionally attached to it. So I don't know. I think maybe it actually is kind of perfect, but 4.5 I'm sticking with. I love the writing. I love the amount of Greek mythology in it. It wasn't too overbearing for me. Fly through this one and you'll probably stay on the hype of it a lot more if you take your time in between. Maybe certain parts of the war and things like that could become a bit boring, but for me, I loved it. I read it within 24 hours, so say no more, because when you read a book that quickly, you know it's a good one. I'm going to reread this one day and I will let you know if it ever bumps up to a 5-star. But 4.5, loved it, got me by surprise. And the next book I read, I don't have the physical copy because I cannot believe in Australia we're not actually getting it till like October or something, which is so confusing, whatever the publishing industry does around here. Sometimes Australia just gets books so late, but I read it on my Kindle and I will be getting the physical copy when it comes out because it was a 4.5 stars. And if this book didn't remind me of other similar books that I have rated 5 stars, it probably would have been a 5-star. But I think because there was a similar book that I loved so much, it just couldn't kind of match it. But it's like a 4.5, 4.75. An incredible recommendation is Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan, and now all I want to do is read all her books. The Nora Goes Off script, and I think there's another one out there, but I'm going to get my hands on that maybe in August because I just loved it. The way it was told, written, there was lines in it that made me emotional, and I think this book just really, really reminded me a lot of similar writing to Abby Jimenez. So I think if you like Abby Jimenez, you would definitely also like Annabelle Monaghan's writing. So that is my huge recommendation. It was nearly a 5-star for me, but 4.5 star. I cannot wait to get the physical copy. I also quite love the covers, and Australia, it's not out yet, but if you have heard the hype around this book, I would say it is not overhyped and it is worth the read. Ali was going through a divorce, there was a death in the family, and she just had a lot going on, and I think that's what gave this book so much depth and emotion to it, as well as the lines about dogs. And if you're a dog owner, I just think you have to read this book because it was so beautifully written. That definitely had me on the tear jerking. It was so good. So it's about Ali and Ethan, and I just think their love story was beautiful. The summer romance, the title says it all. You would actually think it's very cheesy and romantic, but it just has so much depth to the book, and that's all I want to say, because I think if you go into this with no other expectations, you'll really enjoy the story. You won't compare it too much to other books, and you will just love the writing. Next book I read, I listened to majority on Audible, and I actually really recommend doing that because it was such a fun kind of thriller mystery to hear on Audible, which I don't normally do. I'm not a big Audible fan, but I really enjoyed listening to the reappearance of Rachel Price. This book was good. I didn't have too many expectations because I love The Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which has recently been released, its TV show as well, which I have started, but I haven't really gotten into it too far or felt the pull to get into it, but I did love the books so much. So kind of knew Holly Jackson's writing wouldn't disappoint. I just wondered if a thriller, if I was going to enjoy it again, because I didn't want it to, take away from The Good Girl's Guide to Murder. But I really loved how this was done. The twists and turns of Rachel Price reappearing, which happens so early on in the book, I was not expecting, because they are filming a TV show based on Rachel, who is the mother of Belle, and they're doing a TV reality kind of show on her disappearance, but she reappears, and that's all I'm going to say. The twists and turns got me by surprise. I really, really loved this. Great Audible listen as well. Super quick, and I would rate it a 4 stars. The next book I read, I have seen probably like 12 months ago, and I just never picked it up, but I always wanted to pick it up because I was like, that would be a super quick, easy. I've heard really good things about it. I was like, why not just pick it up for a little palate cleanser in between the thrillers and mysteries and all kinds of things. I was like, why not pick this up as a palate cleanser? I'm sure it'll be easy. If I don't like it, I haven't wasted too much time on it, and that was When in Rome by Sarah Adams, which I have never read one of Sarah Adams' books, but I've heard they're great. Pretty sure she writes a lot of closed doors as well, which is fantastic. But I loved this book. I'm too scared to pick up the next one that's like in the interconnected of the series. I think it's like perfect. I don't know, but it's like the one with the tattoos on it, and it's, I think, one of the sisters in the book of the bakery owner. Anyway, I haven't read that one yet because I've got my hopes too low because everyone has said like this was so good and then the next one was so bad. So I don't know, I'm scared to pick it up. But comment below if I should not be too intimidated, if I should pick it up because of how much I loved this book. I rated this a 4.5 star. I just feel like a little short book. It wasn't quite a 5-star for me, but I loved it. It was so quick and easy. She's a famous singer trying to get away from her life, have a little break. She goes to this small, tiny town that is Rome because it was like the closest thing she could get to that was like going away to Rome, but it's Rome in like Kentucky or something like that. Like definitely not the Rome you're thinking in Europe, but I love this book. I loved the bakery owner. I loved just how slow burn it was as well. I'm not going to say too much. I just think pick this little cutie patootie book up. You will fall in love with the characters and the town and the found family. And please convince me to read the next book, or should I just stop here because of how much I loved this book? 4.5 stars when in Rome. The second last book I read of the month, I also don't have the physical copy yet because it was just released, so I had it on my Kindle, and that was Play Along by Liz Tomford, which if you know me, this has been a huge anticipation. I read the Windy City series every time they are released. Every time it gets released, I quickly read it on my Kindle, and that is exactly how Play Along went as well. And I wasn't sure if maybe now, fourth book, are we exceeding too many? Will I enjoy this just as much? And I definitely did. It wasn't a 5-star, but it was a 4-star for me. I think I wasn't super attached to these characters, but I just love her writing. She will have you giggling, kicking your feet, and just wanting to keep page turning, even though they are fat, chunky books. I feel like they're like 600 pages. Let me just check. Oh, this is the problem with, here they are. They are pretty thick, chunky books. The last recent one was Caught Up. So Play Along followed after Caught Up. The last one was Miller and Kai, and then this followed Kai's brother. I don't know why I've already forgotten the characters' names, but let me quickly check. Kennedy works for the Windy City Warriors as like their physio or something, and then Isaiah is one of the players, and that is who you're following along. Look, jump into these series with not too many expectations other than just like a nice, fun found family ride, lots of like deep emotions and the reasons why maybe Isaiah holds back or Kennedy holds back and all these things, but you just feel like you can really visualize like their day to day within those books. Liz Tomford's writing just has you like captivated in the story, and I feel like I can always visualize it as well. So I really love her writing, and I would highly recommend Play Along. 4.5 stars, and please tell me Liz Tomford is bringing out another one because I will pick them up every damn time. She's one of those authors that I will always read. And the very last book I read of July, which we are going out with a bang. This has to be my hands down my favorite book I read this month. Got me by surprise, not something I would particularly pick up or not something I've even heard about much. I had saw like 1 or 2 recommendations about it. I was in the mood for a fantasy. I hadn't read one in a while, but I decided to choose a big hefty one, which I also was intimidated by. And I thought, you know what, let's just do it. It's not super overhyped, so I didn't have much expectations. But it was a 5-star, almost a 6-star read. I am well into the series now and absolutely loving it. But that is the Book of Azrael. I think it could be the trilogy, like the War of Gods trilogy or something like that. I probably need to put it here. But the Book of Azrael was incredible. Like, I have not read a fantasy like this in so long. This has to be one of my favorite fantasy books I have ever read. It tops ACOTAR series, everything. I do not know why this is not super talked about. Let me know if you have heard of it or read it, because I need someone to chat about this book with, because it was so good. It leaves you on a cliffhanger as well, so you bet. I bought the second book, which is the Throne of Broken Gods, I believe. I bought that second book straight away and I have started reading it. There is 3 books currently out. Another book is coming. I don't know how long the series is going to be. But basically, you are following Diana, who made a deal with Caden because all she wants to do is save her sister. And that is what I love about this book. It wasn't a huge focus on any love story. She was ride or die for her family. She wanted to protect her sister at all costs. So she ends up becoming like almost like a slave / she makes this deal with this awful guy who she just has to obey, do everything he wants in order for her sister to stay safe and looked after. But then they're all after this Book of Azrael because it has some rules and way to break down the realms. And that is something I hadn't read in a while in like the fantasy books, was a super like in-depth detail to all the realms and why they're trying to end the world and things like that. But that's probably enough said on this book. I think just dive into it knowing you're going to love the writing, love the storytelling, and the found family aspect of how much she will ride or die for her sister. This is a 5-star for me, and the cliffhanger it ends with is so good. So I cannot wait to see how the second book ends and where I'm at with, you know, my thoughts and feelings on the whole series. But so far, book 1, a 5-star. I think I could even say potentially a 6-star. Let's just see how the rest of the series goes. But my favorite book of the month and way to finish off the month with a bang. So we had the Book of Azrael, Reckless, Throne of the Fallen, Song of Achilles, Reappearance of Rachel Price, When in Rome, Summer Romance, and Play Along. And they were the 8 books I read this month in July. I hope you got some good recommendations. Let me know maybe your favorite book of the month or your biggest surprise, because Song of Achilles was my biggest surprise of the month, and the Book of Azrael had to be my favorite book so far, maybe even in recent months or this whole year. I'm not sure. We'll have to see where my end of year reading wrap up goes and what becomes my favorite book, but I really, really do love it. So please add it to your fantasy recommendations list. Add it to that pile of your TBR. But if you did enjoy hearing about my ratings and reviews of the 8 books I read this month, then please like, subscribe, comment below anything about books. I'd love to chat to you. Head over to my Instagram, and I will see you in my next reading wrap up or wherever you find me on the health and fitness content. But that is all from Lilybelle Lives. Lots of love.